So I don't represent an organisation. I just am an artist. I'm called Michael Pinsky. I have made work around the themes of climate change for quite a few years, even before I even realised that it was around climate change. And this piece up here I did in quite close to here in a place called Bridgewater, which apparently is kind of half underwater at the moment. And I was asked to do a piece around the River Parrett, and I was looking at the river, and people at that time, about 10 years ago, were talking about actually blocking the river off because it looked kind of unattractive when all the water left it. So they wanted to block it off, make it into a kind of yachting arena and stuff. And that had the added advantage that all of those shopping trolleys that stuck in the mud that revealed themselves every time the tide went out would just become invisible all the time. And I started thinking about this, and I looked at a kind of inland dock area, which was naturally parked just before it reached the River Parrett, was always at the same level, and started talking to people about that dock. And I started to realise what was happening was that people were going shopping. A lot of the people who lived around there, perhaps they didn't have cars. They would just fill up the shopping trolley, run it home, take everything out, go up to their flat, and then of course, all the people that are hanging around, the kids and stuff, thought, well, this is a great thing, I'm just going to push it around, have a bit of fun in it, oops, it's gone in the dock, and that's the end of it. So what wasn't visible doesn't exist. And I started hearing more and more stories about there are really a lot of shopping trolleys in this dock. So I thought, right, well, let's go and see about this. Let's really put it to the test. So I hired a team of divers to go in and pull everything out. And this was a kind of scary moment because the Arts Council had kind of hired a press officer and there's newspaper people there. And the last thing they wanted to do was pull up a dead body. So we started pulling things out, and we found 110 shopping trolleys in there, about 15 bicycles. Oh, I think I stood on the projector lead. What's happened here? Oh dear. And let me just get my, there we go. And various barrels of empty oil barrels and an old hi-fi system and stuff like that. So I then took them on a canal boat down to local YMCA, and with some of the kids who went to the YMCA just started sampling the sounds from those bits of detritus which were under the water, and then brought the things back and just mounted them on the water. And at the same time I made a composition out of those sounds and burnt CDs and actually made some little cassette tapes at the time and gave them to all the people who lived around the dock and the people who were using the boats at the time, and just asked them to play the music for a sequence of evenings. So everything there, the principle was that I wasn't bringing anything new there at all. I was just taking what was there, pulling it out. I was taking the sound, I was using people's hi-fi systems that are already in their flats and just asked them to stick it out on the balcony. So, I mean, apart from a mixing desk and some kind of lights you get from any DIY store, they cost about £7 each. There was nothing else brought in. So this gives you an idea of what it looked like across the whole of the docks. The docks are actually about 6 meters deep, but with using some old scaffold and a bit of welding. Of course, it rained every single day. We were welding away, and the spot welder wasn't working. It was a complete nightmare. We got them on the surface of the water. And everyone was very joyous, other than me, because actually I had no idea how to get them out of the water. And the worst thing you can have in water, for anyone who knows about sailing and things, is you do know what things left in the water that you can't see. And my fear was we'd pull these things off, and there'd be all these scaffold poles just about that under the water. But we did get them out in the end. I'll just play a little bit of video just to give you, oh, and we've got no sound, do we? Let me. So that's the guys pulling out the. I don't know why I put that shot in there, it just looks kind of attractive. Here we are sampling sounds. And that's a mysterious sound of me. I'm just going to go up the back while I'm playing this and put the volume up. I'll just be a second. So I think I'm going to just kind of very quickly skip over a couple of projects because I'm aware we're really running late on time. This is a piece that I worked on for a school as a part of a set of commissions called Coast in East Anglia. And they wanted an artist to make a video that was permanently in the school. And I kind of thought that was a really bad idea because when you're setting up shows, oh, I can't believe, what is this? I keep on getting weird things up on here. Let me just. That if you ever set up a show and there's some sort of video piece next door to you and it's on some sort of 5-minute loop, then it drives you absolutely nuts just in a few hours. And I thought, these kids go to school for 6 years and they're going to see a video piece like looping for every 10 minutes. So I thought, well, I want to work on something that is like a database or library that grows over time. And this is in Clacton-on-Sea. And I thought, well, it'd be good to get them to be very, very aware of what the weather was outside where they are. So I asked them to film lots of different weather conditions. And then I put them on a database that was linked to the internet. So whenever it was windy outside, it pulled up their images of wind. Whenever it was raining, the same. And it's a very simple system that you could add to. So over the years, this database has become richer and richer and more articulate in describing the weather conditions that are being linked to that's on the internet. So you start to get things like, well, what happens if it's light rain and wind, for example? So you get more and more subtleties in the way it pulls up the weather on this. And interestingly enough, I did make a folder called Snowing, and the IT guy in the school who'd been there for 10 years, he said, it never ever snows in Clacton-on-Sea. It never snows in Clacton. And of course, the opening night of this piece, it started to snow. And you'll see that on the video here. And really, you know, it goes to show how, I mean, that's not at all an empirical example of how weather's changing. After all, that's weather we're talking about. This is called weather cluster, and it's not climate. So I've got to get on the train with Felicity, so I have to be very wary what I'm saying. But there you go, lots and lots of snow for the first time in Clacton-on-Sea. So, you know, here you've got some of the kids playing around with the ideas of the weather. And just through that, I mean, I actually worked with the geography department in the school. It brought up lots and lots of discussions about climate change, and just made it the kind of core of their discussions when they're in the main hall, is that they're always looking at the weather and commenting about the weather and thinking about how it changes over time. And this piece was a piece I was asked to do for Newcastle when there was an arts and culture summit happening there a few years ago. And that was happening in the Sage, and I really wanted to do a piece in the time. So it's such a kind of beautiful setting for a piece of work. And I really started thinking at the time about how I could start to use that river to indicate this idea of the sea level rising. And I started thinking about building little villages in it and things like that. And then, as I was going up on the train, I started looking through the newspaper, and I saw lots and lots of images of cars being submerged on the roads. And this is something now, it's just so familiar. I mean, we just can't believe it. I mean, this year it's just everywhere. But that year, it was very iconic and not very familiar to us. So I thought, well, what about sticking some cars in the time? And this has an added benefit that I actually do drive, and I hire cars occasionally, and I quite like driving, but I hate cars. And I hate what cars do to society, and that goes beyond the issues of climate change, about having sustainable societies. Cars are like, they're, especially in cities, they provide huge barriers to us being able to live socially. And so any chance to cut a car in half, I will take that chance. So these cars are from a local scrapyard just very near the time. And I worked with the local sculptor in his studio, and we started cutting these cars apart. We got some old car paint, painted them because I wanted the colours to be very bright. Got some LED, these kind of boy racer LED fittings you can get for cars, and stuck them inside, and ran them off a car battery. And they last for so long, like one car battery could run these lights for a month, day and night. So I never needed to go out and sort them out. This is just gives you an idea from an action. So the kind of people who are just coming out of the clubs at night, who are just coming down to time to pee over the edge into the river as they normally do, just get this shock that they see these cars there. I mean, we had this other problem as well. The first time we put them in, I got advice from the marine scientists in Newcastle about how to sight them, and they submerged. So we had to actually get a boat back out and drag them out and re-float them again. But that gave us like two good news stories. You know, they've sunk, they've come back up. It's all part of the narrative. Nothing is ever a bad thing, you know, if you spin the story in the right way. But I was kind of shocked, I've got to say, when I saw them sinking at first. I wasn't the happiest person. It's a very, very tidal river, so they're under a huge amount of pressure as they go up, you know, as the tide goes in and out. I'm going to speed on from that. very quickly mention this, and then I'm going to show a video that will last 5 minutes. Is that okay? This is a piece that I did in Belgium, where they were having a huge festival on this site. And interestingly, the first thing they built on this site were 4 enormous, there's only 3 in this, 4 enormous wind turbines, 150 metres high. And they're massive compared to British ones. And they wanted to get a lot of artists in, visual artists and also performance and musicians for this event to kind of open this area. And in fact, 200,000 or 300,000 people came. And I decided to do a piece that monitored everything that went on. So we were tracking electricity usage, water usage, noise pollution, and the amount of waste it was creating. And then I marked it on the columns of the wind turbines. So they became, I called it monometer, which is like monumental meters, but they're like thermometers. So the whole event became almost like, if you imagine ants were kind of driving this machine. I think you get a slight sense of the scale. I mean, so it's funny because they invited all these people from Lille, this is in Belgium, and bussed them all out there, hundreds of 50, 60,000 of them, and then they all missed their bus home. And they were just left stranded in Belgium. It was the most bizarre thing. So I'll just move to the final piece, and you've seen some of the slides, but this is a piece I was asked to do, well, I was commissioned by Lift and Arts Admin to do a piece, to make a piece looking specifically at climate change. And for a while I'd been thinking about these ideas of marking lines on buildings, marking where the sea level would be. And this is an illustration from The Guardian, which I can't quite believe actually, because it's got Edinburgh up there. I mean, I can't ever see Edinburgh being underwater. When you go there, it's up a big, huge hill. But certainly lots and lots of London will be underwater quite shortly, especially South London. But I decided to kind of extrapolate on the figures that were given and think about London in 1,000 years' time and mark where the tidal level would potentially be based on very ropey evidence on famous monuments in London. So these pieces are meant to be, they've taken on kind of minimalist aesthetic and are beautiful in their own right. But you also encourages you to think about the topography of London and the relationship of these lines on the monuments. And if you join these lines together and imagine where you are, then you're kind of well underwater. So I'd like to just finish off. I'm sorry, I wanted to have a bit more time to speak, but I'll finish off with this video, and then maybe have time for a few questions.
I don't believe climate change is real. I think it's the way the world works.
It's definitely real. You can see it every day.
Yeah, I think climate change is real.
It's a disgrace. I'm outraged on the outrage level.
No, I think it's bullshit. I'm families. I'm not having to worry about anything else.
I think it could be possibly apocalyptically bad.
And what's going on with the weather? It's freaky.
It's not a question of whether climate change is happening or not. It's a question of how we respond to it. And these are the issues that we need to deal with today. So Plunge is a work that allows people to look into the future and see how the cityscape will change. And through that, they'll be able to determine how they're going to react.
But that actually looks like quite a good map.
I do
the idea is that we're marking iconic monuments in London with a simple band of light, a blue band of light, showing what the waterline will be in London in 3012. Originally I was interested in this idea of marking the waterline across buildings because I'd seen a film about the damming of the three rivers in China and how they marked all the buildings with the line where the water would be once the dam was put, be above the water level, no matter how much London is submerged.
The jury's not out any longer, you know. And so if there is an integral, fundamental link made between climate change and the state of the global economy, that will scare people.
It's in 1,000 years, so it feels so surreal. So it doesn't feel like it's going to affect me directly. On the other hand, I'm from Holland, so obviously Holland is going to be affected by rising water and everything.
We're meeting here at Duke of York Steps mainly because it's a very convenient spot to meet motorcyclists and head off round past Parliament and around Westminster and Lambeth Bridges, but also because that ring there shows where the water is likely to be in whenever it is, a couple of 100 years, if we go on as we are, and cycling is part of the solution.